Let's see how to install PostgreSQL 17 and pgAdmin on Ubuntu 24.04. First, I'll SSH into my Ubuntu server. And of course, you must have sudo privileges on this server. We're now going to run all of these commands. These commands will install PostgreSQL 17, pgAdmin, and also run the configuration script. I didn't invent anything myself, I only copied and merged what I found in the documentation of PostgreSQL and also in the documentation of pgAdmin, which can be found in postgresql.org and pgadmin.org respectively. So let's copy these commands and run them on our server. And this will take a few minutes depending on your server and your internet connection speed. Toward the end of the installation, we will be prompted to provide an email and a password. Notice that this email and password will be used to log into pgAdmin. It's important to understand that we have two authentication systems in place here. One for pgAdmin and a different one for PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL has its own users and their passwords, and pgAdmin has its own authentication system. The email and password that we will soon be prompted for are for pgAdmin. Okay, so here is the prompt that we talked about, and we need to provide an email. This email will be used later on to log into pgAdmin. And we also need to provide a password. And we are being informed that pgAdmin will be configured using Apache, the Apache web server. So let's confirm with yes and yes again. So the installation part is behind us. We already have on our server PostgreSQL and pgAdmin installed. Let's move on. We now need to set a password for the PostgreSQL user. So as you can see here, by default PostgreSQL creates a user called Postgres without a password. Now by default pgAdmin won't allow you to use users that don't have a password. So we're going to provide a password for this user. This is very simple and can be done directly from the server. First we need to run PostgreSQL using this default user. And what we see now is the PostgreSQL prompt. From here, we're going to run this command, alter user, which will change the user and add a password for it. And of course, it's highly recommended that you change this password that I wrote here, your password, with something a bit more secure. I'll just go with this password, your password, but you should definitely go with something a bit more secure. And we added a password to the Postgres user, and we can quit from the Postgres prompt. To do that, I just type /q. Let's now find our server's IP address. If you used SSH to connect to the server, you probably know it already, but let's run it anyway. And here's the IP address of my server. And of course, if you're installing locally on your local machine, you're going to use localhost instead of this IP address. So now that we know the IP address of the server, let's copy it. And let's open a new tab in our web browser. And let's navigate to the pgAdmin page. It's done as written here, your server IP /pgAdmin4. So here is the IP address of the server /pgAdmin4. We now need to log in using the email and password we defined. And now we need to connect to the server from pgAdmin. So to do that, we right-click where it says Servers, then choose Register and Server. Now, in the General tab, we need to provide some descriptive name for this connection. And here you can use any name you want. I just go with absprog.com. Then we need to switch to the Connection tab. Now, for the host name, we're going to write localhost. The port will stay 5432. The username is going to be Postgres. As you might remember, that's the default username for PostgreSQL. So let's replace example with this user. And the password is the one we defined for this user, the one we changed from the PostgreSQL prompt. So we can still see it here, and I just went with this password, your password. So I'll copy it, and you're going to need the password you defined. And let's paste it here. And when we now click on Save, we can see that we're now connected from pgAdmin to our PostgreSQL server.